Already, let's just. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 100. Boy, timing sometimes is a very interesting thing. It's Harry Mays, Jason Martinez, episode 100. Who the hell would have thought we would have got here? What's going on, Harry? We got a big guest today.
I know, not me. When we first started this, I think it was John DeBella, JDB, was the opening guest, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but 100 episodes means we've been doing this for a couple of years.
That's because
we don't do one every week.
And there's nobody there to fire us, Harry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Be your own boss. That's the rule.
Yeah.
We're going to learn a lot about the rules with our guest. Let's get right to him because I don't want to waste any of my time or his time. I know he's probably got an appointment down on the beach because he loves the shore as much as anybody native to this area. He is the author of Loud, How a Shy Nerd Came to Philadelphia and Turned Up the Volume of the Most Passionate Sports City in America. He spent 30 years on the airwaves here in Philadelphia from WIP. It is the one and only, the legendary Angelo Cataldi. Ange, how are you?
Jason, Harry, great to see you guys. Listen, if you started with DeBella and now you're with me, you're going downhill. I'm warning you.
Legends.
DeBella's a legend. Yes. I'm just old. It's a difference.
No, you're on the Mount Rushmore of sports talk radio. Are you kidding me?
Well, that's kind of you, but I worked with Jason a long time. You know, it was fun and it was traumatic the whole time. There was a lot of drama.
Yeah, behind the scenes, off the air, there's drama on the air. There was always that, right, because of Philadelphia sports and the passion and all of that. But behind the scenes, there was always some drama as well, Ange.
Absolutely. I hated most of my bosses. Jason wasn't one of them. Like, none of my other ex-bosses have ever asked me to go on their podcast. Let me put it to you that way. We're not that close. But it was fun. Look, it was 33 years, and when I got to write the book, I got to kind of relive it a little bit. And it was like, wow, I got a really good deal to be able to do that for that long and talk sports in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know people always said to me, like, you know, you didn't even work for a living. Like, you just went on the air for 4 hours and talked sports. I mean, how easy is that? But they don't really know what goes into it the other 20 hours of the day where you're sitting there thinking, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? How am I going to generate interest and phone calls if that's what you do? And it's a consuming job.
Boy, Harry, you are so right about that. It was, people always think that 4-hour deal, and they went, wow, how much do they pay you? You're off the air. Like, I was off the air at 10. By the time I was driving home an hour or so later, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing the next day. And that is a preoccupation from then until you go to bed that night. And I'm on the internet constantly trying to find things that I can use. And I'm getting up at 2:30 the next morning because I'm scripting every segment of the show. This happened kind of after you, Jason, like the last 10 years or so. I wasn't as sure of myself because I was losing it. I was in my 60s. But it's all consuming. And when you stop after 33 years, only then did I fully realize what kind of a commitment it took to do the job. Now, there might have been shortcuts, but I was never really good at finding those.
No, you didn't find shortcuts. You kidding me? I talk to aspiring broadcasters today. And I still cite your preparation, Ange, because you'd walk in with multiple legal pads full. And I remember asking you one time, I said, why do you have all that? You go, because it's my outline. It's there. I know it's there. If things pivot and I don't need it, that's fine. But I can't be caught without it. Your preparation, you were so diligent. You were in bed every night by the same time, up by 2:30, in that station, listening to sound. How did you kind of stay with that regimen for 33 years? That's not easy, especially when you get to the top.
When I told you that, I hadn't fully explored why, but now I know. It was all insecurity. I did not grow up to be a radio personality. I grew up to be a writer. I went to school to be a writer, a reporter, somebody who worked for a newspaper, wrote columns, covered teams. And that I knew. I never was that maniacal about being prepared for that job because I was prepared for it. I did it all those years. Then Tom Brookshire gives me a chance to go into radio full-time in 1990. And the first day I'm there, I'm realizing, I don't really know how to do this job. This is different. And Brookie was a very, very hard worker. He was a prep guy. He worked a couple hours every morning before we went on. He was there at 4. And I did it because Jason, I was constantly worried that I'd run out of something to say.
Yeah.
And
you didn't want that moment of not having something to say.
Oh, and you don't realize that at the time, but yeah, I got more insecure as I got deeper into my career because I wasn't able to come up with names as quickly anymore. Things were slowing down upstairs because I had done it so long and I was getting older, and I got more and more prep oriented in the last 10 years. And honestly, the last 3 or 4, I was barely hanging on mentally because I wasn't coming up with stuff. And Rhea Hughes, we had Al was there too, and Al knew when to jump in, Al Morgan. But Rhea Hughes, we had like a signal, like, Rhea, help me out here.
Yeah.
And she would jump right in.
Lifeline.
And it was like, it's like we had our own way to communicate to cover up what I was no longer able to do as well.
Wow.
And, I made it almost till I was 72 years old. And that's way longer than I probably should have tried.
Wow.
If you, I gather you don't play golf in your spare time, do you?
I tried once. In my book, it describes what I did when I represented a golf, teaching center, and they dropped me. I lost 18 balls in eight holes. And I went to them. I had done all these commercials. I went to them and I went, are you sure you can teach everyone to play golf? And they went, well, there's some exceptions. And I said, am I one? And they said, yeah, it kind of looks like.
That's what I'm thinking.
Harry, seriously, we're in the eighth fairway. We got in the car, drove back to the clubhouse. That was the last time I ever went on a golf course.
That's what I thought, because I'm thinking, like, he must have never played golf, because if he did, he probably would have retired a lot earlier.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. People, there are guys. I lost my urologist. Which you don't know, you get to be my age, because he retired early to go to Florida to golf every single day. And I said,
goodness.
oh, what about my plumbing? That's it. No commitment to my plumbing.
What am I gonna do?
Right.
Ange, the one thing I remember too from all my years working with you at WIP, the post show meeting, and you would come in there. Al would come in, just sauntering in, looking like he just had a massage. Jonesy's always Jonesy, Rhea as well. But you would come in and you would fall into the chair. You gave every ounce of what you had. I remember during breaks, you're talking to the other people. When we come back, you would not let the energy drop at all. And the notion of, in radio, you're only as good as your next segment is very easy to say, very hard to live. But you seem to do that, and you spilled it every day.
Here's the thing. You're 100% right that that's the way it did. I think part of that was also the insecurity. But the other part of it was this perfectionist thing that I have, that we would have a great shot, and I would be driving home. A lot of this stuff happened when I drove. That's why I'm an awful driver. And I was going, all I could focus on was the one moment in the show that didn't go the way I wanted it. The question I asked the wrong way to the person I was interviewing, or the caller I went to, and I blew it. I should have said this. And that's all I would focus on. And the rest of the show might have gone well, but I would only worry about what went badly. And it haunted. And it was so hard to do it that way. If I had to do it all over again, I would not be that anal. Yeah, I wouldn't be that crazy to have everything exactly right. It's unscripted. Some of it's going to go wacky, and sometimes that'll lead to some good radio.
Right. I did a couple years with Tony Bruno. That was every day.
Tony Bruno, let me tell you, I'm so glad you brought him up, Harry. Tony Bruno. You understand, Tony Bruno taught me and Al everything we knew about radio. Because when Tony came in, after Brookie left, Tony came in, and they brought him in because Al and I were newspaper guys who had no background in radio. I had done a couple of years with Brookie, but that was about it. And Tony knew how to do it, and we just followed him. And he did. The problem with Tony, though, was that, like, he wasn't a morning person, but he was on a morning show. So he would be late a lot. And he wasn't a nut for prep. He had his own things to do, and he knew his shtick, Mr. Monday Night. He had his stuff, and it was great. It was great. But I'd be honest, we worked 3 years together. All I did was take mental notes. And then when he was gone, and it was Al and I with, Chris Gamble for a while and then reused, we just took a lot of his lessons and used them in our own way. Thank God for him. He was probably the number one guy who taught me how to do radio. And we did it on the air for 3 years in a major market.
Yeah.
So that couldn't have happened in the sports format now. It was so young then.
Yeah.
The format was new, and everybody was kind of experimenting. And we learned a lot from Tony.
And one of the things in your career that you're noted for is your skills as an interviewer. I see a lot of guys do interviews now, and they don't listen. They ask, and that's it. And they have their agenda of what they want to ask, and they do that. But they don't listen to responses to have a conversation. Was this something that you came in with from your training as a reporter that you kind of already had an innate ability to do, or was this something that developed over the years? Because also, when you did interviews, you came in with enough nuts, big enough to carry it in a dump truck. You'd ask the questions that people would be afraid to ask. So where did the interviewing prowess come from?
Well, first of all, it came from my background in journalism. I was taught how to interview at a great school, Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. And they taught you that, know what you ask. Don't hesitate to ask the toughest questions and listen to the answer, because a lot of these things require a follow-up. Yep. So the lesson was there. And, I never lost that. That part of it I felt like was an advantage for me, because I could take a piece of what I did in journalism and use it in sports talk radio, which is not really journalism.
Yeah, it was comfortable already.
And I did that. And, the thing about it is, what I learned as time went on was people were less and less likely to ask the toughest questions. And the reason I did it is that my whole focus in doing a radio program was never on the athlete. I never wanted to be an athlete. I never befriended an athlete or a sports figure. I had created a wall between me, because none of that interested me. I was interested in the people that were paying my salary, which were the listeners or the readers or whatever. So I geared all of my questions in an interview style for what does a fan want? Why did you do this? What's wrong with it? Why did you punt in that moment with the game on the line? I had asked that question to Doug Peterson once in an overtime game. And Doug Peterson paused and he went, "Yeah, if I had to do it again, I would have gone for it. We ended up tying. That gave us our last chance. We could have won the game." And I looked over at Al, who was not as much he never associated himself as much with the media end of it. Al was always on the player's side. And Al shook his head like, he shouldn't have said that. He showed his weakness. And I'm going, Al, that's news. We just got news. The guy just acknowledged he made a mistake. But that's why I love Doug Peterson. He gave you honest answers to questions. Harry, do you imagine asking a question to a sports figure, especially a coach or a manager, and getting the absolute honest answer to that question? He was unique in that way.
Yeah. That's cool. We got our first ow. Jason, did you hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just terrific.
How'd you keep him awake is what I want to know. I mean, he'd be studying the markets, reading the paper.
He was reading the Wall Street Journal, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It's right. But in the moment, he never missed the shot. He knew where to get it in, get that zinger in, or do. He was aware without being aware. But you're right. He did a lot of other stuff during the shows, Jason. I can't deny.
How much of the on-air Angelo was the off-air Angelo? Like, were you a character more on the radio, or is that your normal persona?
It's not. It's not my normal persona. And when I went into radio, I didn't even really know that the person I refer to now as the radio guy existed. And it was an evolution. It took a long time. And the radio guy for a lot of years was homophobic, was sexist, invited ethnic humor, at a time when it was more acceptable than it is now, but I was still pretty crass. Mia Hughes remembers our riff I did on Martina Navratilova when she was still working at a country station. And she said she was in her car and she said, "What an idiot this guy is." And then we worked together for 25 years. And she slowly trained me to be slightly less an idiot. But no, that personality is not my personality. When I'm off the air, especially when I was not at the studio, I was quiet, watched a lot of TV, didn't talk very much. I was a shy nerd. One of the parts of the title in the book is how a shy nerd, came to Philadelphia, did this stuff. I just did it as a survival mechanism. If I used the personality that I used as a journalist on the air, I would not have been on long. It's boring. It was slow. In fact, if you would listen to some of the first year or two that Al and I worked together on a show we called the Morning Sports Page, you would have heard a whole different person, a much lower key, quiet, analytical. When I was on the air back then, I wanted to prove to people how brilliant I was. And then Tom Bigby, one of my first ones, he brought me in really early on, and he went, "Oh, good. Who are you trying to impress? Make those people laugh. Get them angry. All that stuff doesn't get you anywhere. You're not going to do anything doing that." And although I had many fights with that man over the years, that advice was great advice.
Nobody cares how smart you are.
That's so good. I didn't know you could do it. That's him.
Yeah, I mean, he would say, like, it was all about what came out of the speakers for Bigby. He didn't care about anything else. He was there. It was about radio.
Right.
And you said you had that contentious relationship with Tom over the years, and you had it in a contract that you didn't have to meet with him for a bit. How did that come back? How did Bigby take that?
That's the greatest thing.
That's awesome.
I didn't have to meet with him, Jason. I didn't have to speak to him.
What
I did in the book, I actually got my agent to find the clause, and I put the clause in the book because people didn't believe it actually existed. It was 1995. I did have a couple of other job opportunities.
EI, right?
And that man drove me to distraction. The first couple of years, he taught me a lot about radio. But most people at some point hate their boss. I hated him with a passion, an amazing passion. And then in 1995, I said to my agent, I can't work for him anymore. You got to get me out of here. I'll go to Boston. I'll go. So I don't want to work for this man. And he said, maybe I can figure out what to do. I'm going to put a clause in that says he can't talk to you if you don't want to.
The program director.
They're not going for that. We were owned by CBS Radio back then. And they knew, CBS Radio knew what a ball breaker Tom Bigby was.
Yeah.
And through the whole negotiation, I mean, they negotiate a lot of stuff. They never went near the clause. And the clause got approved. And for 2 years, I didn't use it. And in 1997, there's an epic moment in sports. Mike Tyson bit off the earlobe of Evander Holyfield on Saturday night. Monday morning, I come in to do the show. The world is talking. I come in and I do 10 minutes on how amazing this was. We go to break. The hotline's up. It's big. I didn't even know he got up that early. It was 6:10 in the morning. He got up again. You could do this better than I could, Jason. He goes, We don't talk boxing on my radio station. Get off this now. And I flipped out. I went, are you? All right. Jason saw me a few times when I lost it. And finally, I told him to go bleep himself and said, I am no longer speaking to you. It's in the contract. And I hung the phone up. The next 3 hours and 50 minutes, all I talked about was Randy Holyfield and Mike Tyson, as the world was. And he never knew the clause existed until later. My agent officially said, we're invoking the clause. We are not speaking to Tom Big. And he couldn't believe it.
He's on the phone to Mel Karmazin.
I can't believe it. So for over 2 years, we didn't speak. There was no communication of any kind, and he couldn't get to me. And that's really how I survived in a period where it was driving me insane.
Wow. Do you think you could have had like anywhere close to the amount of success that you had in another city doing what you did?
No. And that's such a great question, Harry, because when I got the chance to come here to work at the Philadelphia Inquirer, I understood. They hated me in Providence. And I grew up there because I was a troublemaker. My own father was relieved when I left because one of the last things I ever did was an expose, which really proved conclusively that one of the 49 fights Rocky Marciano, he was 49-0, was fixed. And it was fixed in Providence. And I wrote this big story. And my father was so mad at me because my father loved every Italian athlete. And why you go making trouble? He's dead. Who cares? I said, Dad, it's news. It was right around the time Larry Holmes was getting close to that record. And those people in Providence, they were thrilled when I left. And I came to Philadelphia because I knew it was more in line with the kind of negative, critical approach that I took. And I guess I was just born with that. I don't know. I know they reinforced it when I was at Columbia, but it was the perfect fit for me. We had a chance, Al and I, 2 years after we started, we had a chance to go to Boston, WEEI, mornings, right? And Al and I was ready to sign. They were giving us a lot of money. Where do I sign? I'm on my way. Dad, I'm coming home. I don't even think he wanted me to. And Al said, I'm not going. And I said, why? And he went, this won't work in Boston. We're yelling and screaming and criticizing. They love their heroes of Boston. They'll hate us. No one will want to listen. And that's why we didn't go.
Wow.
And I was right.
Wow.
Our show, especially the way we did it in the 90s, I'm not sure it would have worked in any other city.
Was that the only time that you got an offer to go somewhere else?
No. Even before I went back into radio, I was going to work at the LA Times. Then I got offered twice, 2 different times, EEI in Boston. And I guess there were opportunities in New York, too, which is where I went to school. But New York, it would have probably fit. But New York was so much less provincial than Philadelphia. They covered everything. They had lots of sports. It didn't have to be a local story to be a big deal in New York. I like the localness of Philadelphia. I like that we could focus on one little problem for 3 weeks and talk about nothing else. And I never get tired of doing that. And the other stuff, I didn't want to. I liked the mentality here. I thought it was perfect for the way I thought.
And over the years, you had some great athletes in town that provided talking points, whether, that was way back with the Eagles and Randall all the way through to obviously McNabb, and then you have Iverson, Lindros, Jimmy Rollins, some great athletes through the years that would be very sports radio topic friendly. When you look back at some of the ones that, you covered and you had a lot of dialogue on, what memories does that bring back?
Well, here's the great common denominator of all that. All of the biggest stars that played in Philadelphia during my 33 years, with almost no exceptions, hated WIP and specifically me. And they really did. And the reason why they did was that I was insanely critical. The best example I can give you, a year ago, a thing came out, a documentary on Amazon Prime about Jason Kelce. Now, I wasn't even aware. I had signed some paperwork because they had done a whole bunch of footage from a show he did down in Seattle with Jason Kelce. And they took a lot of the biographical stuff, and they put it in there. And then they've got me on tape, like 5 or 6 games into the season, saying, Jason Kelce should be embarrassed for the way he played. He hurt the team. He cost them the game. I'm hearing my own voice over there. And all these people are there to celebrate Kelce, and I'm shrinking down. And my wife was looking at me like, you said that about him? And the thing was, I held everybody accountable for every single game. They could have the greatest career, but if they had a bad game, I'd yell and scream about it. And the reason I did that, A, by nature, I'm highly critical, and B, I think the fans were doing it. I think even the fans would. When I would go on one of those riffs, they go, boy, Kelce sucked. Maybe he is done, right? There would be a whole bunch of people that will call and say, I was saying the same thing when the game was on.
Yeah.
Of course, then there'd be a lot of other people saying, boy, you are moron. Yeah. But that's what caused an interesting dynamic on the show. But they all pretty much hated me. McNabb was number one. He hated me the most because of a wild snafu with the mayor of the city, Ed Rendell. We ended up at the draft when he got drafted second, and we all booed him because we wanted Ricky Williams. He never, ever, ever forgave that problem and was always, but what it exposed to me was that he was too sensitive to be a big success at Philadelphia. Allen Iverson, I mean, we kind of loved him. He was such a great player. But whenever he had a scandal, the guy with the poom poom pants, Charlie Jones, stuff like that, we feasted on that. He didn't. He made a point of saying he never would listen because he knew it wouldn't go well. The Macho Row Phillies were the people that hated us the most.
Really?
If I had walked in, well, that was where Jim Fregosi said, the people that listen to WIP sleep with their sisters, and the people that work sleep with their mothers.
Oh.
And we sent Glenn Macno there after he had made that comment. And I was just talking to Glenn last week. I said, Glenn, did you think he was going to punch you out, Fregosi? Because Fregosi was a rough guy, right? And Glenn said, well, if he did, it would have been really good for the station.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
But none of them loved that. Let me just say, none of them said, wow, you guys are amazing. Although at the very end, Kelce was as close to being warm toward me and the station as any great player had ever been in the time I was there.
Wow.
Well, that whole McNabb thing, I mean, that's where the Dirty 30 all came from, which was just pure genius on your part. I mean, that gave you 30 people that were going to be on the phone on your show, like on a daily basis, just hoping to get 2 minutes to talk.
And a chant.
Yeah.
Harry, none of that was planned. None of it. Right? The mayor calls up. The mayor had given us, some cachet, some gravitas in his city. The mayor's calling up, talking sports with these guys. They must be pretty important. And then he called one time and he said, I've been watching tape. While he was mayor, he was watching tape of football players. And he goes, I love this Ricky Williams. We got to get him. We got the second pick in the draft. I said, Ed, we're on board. Well, whatever you need, we're your sounding board. He lined up. He got us 30 tickets to the draft. It was at the Felt Forum in New York.
Right.
And we hired a bus, and we said, we're going to get 30 people, and we'll call them the Dirty 30. We ended up with 29, right? The bus is about to leave. We literally convinced a homeless guy to come on the bus and to drink and eat all he wants the whole day if he'll be number 30. And he did. He had a great day.
Yeah, the dirty 29 doesn't sound as good as the dirty 30.
Jason, we were doing 30, and we got to the thing, and they said, with the second pick of the draft, Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner, said the Eagles select, and we didn't hear Ricky Williams. We heard Donovan McNabb, and that was a spontaneous eruption of anger from a bunch of drunk idiots. All right, and the bottom line was, we lived in infamy. It's the most famous thing that happened on our show in 30 plus years because the whole country talked about it. It's still occasionally shown because you got all these guys with the Eagles makeup on and helmets and shoulder pads. So, we don't want it.
The 700 level mentality, right?
Right.
And Jason, ironically, McNabb was a far better choice than Ricky Williams was.
In hindsight, right?
Was totally wrong. But yeah, it was a stroke of genius because you're right. We got headline. It just shows you don't have to do things smart to sometimes benefit. We had all these core fans now who became regular callers. They became famous in their own right. And we got all this attention, right? But, I mean, it wasn't great for McNabb.
No.
Well, and you're right. He took it personally. He could have just got over it and realized it wasn't a personal thing. It was just, it happened. It's sports fandom that took place. You know, the funny thing that some of the coaches that over the years, you know, I feel like things really turned in Eagle Land with Buddy Ryan and that brashness that he brought and really kind of ignited the 700 level. You know, you had and then you have the confluence and difference between Buddy Ryan and a guy like Rich Kotite, you know, covering the two different ones. But you dealt with some coaches over the years, and I imagine many of them weren't too fond either.
No. In fact, Buddy Ryan, I covered him first year that he came here. I was a regular beat reporter, covered the Eagles on the Inquirer, and I was not really perceiving what he was trying to do, which was really connect with the fan base, because he had just a nasty defense. Those guys were vicious, and the city loved that stuff, right? But I was just listening to what he was saying and going, well, they're not going to win every game in the division, and they're not going to do this and not going to do that. So they were like 3-5 at the break. They actually had a bye week right in the middle. And I went to my editor and I went, I want a week off from the beat. I want to do an analysis to show how Buddy Ryan, nothing Buddy Ryan says is true. He's a friggin' liar, all right? And they went, go. And I did it. It was really, really vicious, but accurate. I mean, I took all his quotes and I just rolled it out. Went back onto the beat after the bye week, and we're sitting there we're standing with him after the practice, first time, and I'm the Inquirer. I'm the biggest newspaper there. And I fire off a question. Dead silence. 10, 15, 20 seconds. Crickets. No one's saying anything. Ryan is acting like I do not exist. And then, to break the tension, a reporter asks another question. He resumes answering the question, and he never answered a question I asked for the rest of the season. Wow. So he hated. Andy Reid hated me. I hated Andy Reid a lot more than I hated Buddy Ryan. Because Andy Reid was a liar. He was a liar all 14 years. And he kept telling everyone how much he gave a damn about the fans and never answered a question honestly in his life. He didn't care about anything except the climate in his locker room. And I can't stand the guy. He's the guy I hated. I hated him more than Gabe Kapler. And Gabe Kapler was the phony manager of the Phillies right near the end of my tenure. And I got into a shouting match with him.
I was listening that morning.
Right. And and the fact of the matter is, he was another guy that had no actual respect for the fans. The big common denominator with me was, if you disrespected the fans, I went after you. And those guys didn't answer questions. Doug Peterson was fantastic. Pete McCannon, which no one remembers.
Yeah.
He was stuck in between. He was incredible. He was such an honest and dignified guy, right? Those were the guys I loved because I could actually get answers for the fans out of them, not boilerplate. And this Sirianni right now, forget it.
Yeah.
Well, he tried to pander.
Nick Sirianni, to me, is a moron, all right? Nick Sirianni doesn't have a clue what he's doing, and this will probably be his last year. But he faked him out. He won a lot of games somehow with great leadership in the clubhouse, but that went awry at the middle part of last year, and he got exposed. But he's another guy. He'll never give you a straight answer.
I was turned off to him from the beginning because he tried to pander so hard to the fan base.
Yeah.
Oh,
like it seemed desperate to me.
he is a professional panderer. You understand? The only reason he's still there now is that he kisses the ass of his bosses every single day. They don't. Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman, and I think Howie's done a very good job. I think he's an excellent general manager. But both of those guys do not want to hear from anyone who's going to tell them they're wrong, even when they're wrong. They don't allow for it. Jeff Lurie has found a little hermetically sealed rich guy bubble, which keeps out anyone that ever says anything negative to him. He's lucky I wasn't on the air last year after the collapse. When the day after it, the guy went to St. Martin and purchased a new yacht, right? That would be stuck to him like a jellyfish if I was still there. I would have never let him off the hook for that. I would bring it up every day until I made myself sick talking about it.
A lot of that's Chip Kelly's.
Like that anymore. They get away with it now.
Yeah, a lot of that's Chip Kelly scar tissue.
Yeah.
They made that mistake.
Chip Kelly, I don't know. I didn't hate him as much as the other guys, even though he was lousy.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was something about him, like he was so strange that the fact that he hid his secret wife. He had a wife.
Why?
And it wasn't on any bio. And then, we found out a couple of years ago. Do you know he's married? He's married. What? He was strange.
Yeah.
What's your take on sports radio today, like the medium today?
Now I'm going to sound like an old man, which frankly is accurate. It's softer now. And the reason it's softer now, there's two reasons. One is it's safer, it's easier to be softer. It's easier. What the WIP did last year pretty much made me physically ill, even though I guess technically it worked. Jack Fritz, a producer there, was once my intern. In fact, I had nothing but a contentious relationship the whole time, right? And he decides Trey Turner's getting $300 million. It's hitting 230. We shouldn't be booing him. We need to give him a standing ovation. Well, that nauseated me. That physically made me ill. And I put it on that night. And they did it. They gave him a standing ovation. Started hitting. It was great. And I went, this is not the Philadelphia I came to. Wouldn't have worked. Wouldn't have worked 20 years ago. Probably wouldn't have worked 10 years ago. And I would have done everything I could have when I was there to sabotage it if I were there last year. It's softer now. It's more, and part of it too is that the teams now are able to call bosses and say to bosses, if Jason was my boss, hey Jason, Cataldi he was out of line today. Back him off.
Yeah.
Now he knew I would have said no. I'm not backing off. But now they'll back off.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to stay in business.
And they don't have the cachet or job security that you had.
Well, I was grandfather. Honestly, when it was like I wouldn't have had the cachet either if I came up 10 years or 20 years later. But I had been there so long that they went, well, what are you going to do? The only way we're going to shut him up is if we kill him. But the bottom line is they're being controlled better by especially the Eagles.
Partners.
They're doing a very good job of controlling them because they have a business partnership with the WIP and the Phillies to some extent too. And the people that are there either know they're probably not going to win that fight, or they don't even want to engage it. But it's much softer, and you know what? It may reflect the fan base now. Maybe the fan. I mean, those people stood up and applauded for Trey Turner. Maybe they like that better. Well, if so, then I'm glad I'm out of it, because I'm a dinosaur.
And we've seen a lot of people from your generation of sports talk retire, whether it was in New York with Francesa, Mad Dog's still going, unbelievably. Mike, obviously, Missinelli, Glenn Macnow just retired last week. Jason Stark still going in a different medium these days. But Howard's still going. And he was back on the air this past weekend. I know about your contentious relationship with Howard. Go back to the Andy Reid debate and those times and all the on-air battles you two had. But the way the thing played out with Howard, I don't know what happened there. But I know you've been very critical of how the company has handled it with very no transparency, I should say. And, it's in today's society, I'm surprised that it's been handled that way and that he is back on the air.
I'm not at all surprised, because I lived in that culture the last 5 to 10 years where a lot of those decisions, now programming decisions, were being made by lawyers. All right. What I can tell you about it is, I don't know what he did, but there's a tape that shows exactly what he did. It was videotape, and that tape has been embargoed. Nobody's got anything on the tape. The people who took over there, Howard has never shut his mouth in 50 years. I don't think that would have been his approach. I think Howard understands, if you're doing talk radio and you yourself are involved in a news story, especially if it has an element of scandal, you have to talk about it. You have to take calls on it, or you can't do it the next time it happens to a sports figure.
Yeah.
You can't apply a different standard to what you talk about when it's you. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. It's hypocritical. And it smacks to me of a lawyer decision, because it went to the top, it went to Odyssey, and the lawyers must have gotten involved. Somebody at Odyssey saw the tape and said to Howard, you're going to have to do something here. We're going to get you banned from Citizens Bank Park, right? That'll show that we're being proactive. You keep your mouth shut. And then when he finally did say something last Saturday, it was virtually nothing. He didn't even apologize to anyone but the woman that he supposedly attempted to kiss. And he said, I'm not talking about it. And if there's one way to keep a story alive, just say, I'm not talking about it. Yeah. Try it at home when you're having a fight with your partner. Say, I'm not talking about that anymore. Now you got at least another 3 weeks with it. You got to say what you feel. Have people scream at you. Do that all right there, and then it kind of ebbs. It goes away. But when you do it this way, these decisions are being made by lawyers who have no idea how to do radio. And it's going to follow him. And I have no idea whether he did anything that bad. It was bad enough for Odyssey wanted to throw him out of Citizens Bank Park for the year, but I have no idea what it was. All I know is, if you're part of the story, talk. That's the way you do talk radio.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that gave you a lot of content and was a phenomenon, and I'd love to just get your true, thoughts about the whole Wing Bowl phenomenon, which was just, I can't even.
It's Al's fault.
I try to describe it to people that aren't from here, and I come up empty.
Guys, I think I would like to break a story on your podcast, right?
Oh.
Very soon, an amazing documentary on Wing Bowl will be released.
Wow.
In fact, Jason will love, you were there for some of our Wing Bowls, right, Jason?
Oh, yeah.
The title of it is No One Died. Because after every Wing Bowl, we would have a meeting and we would go, no one died.
Yeah.
But
which in itself is remarkable.
I'll tell you, this documentary has got some of the greatest stuff I've been working with the guy. I am not involved financially in any way with it, but I have kind of both Odyssey and WIP would not cooperate because I think they don't really want to remind people of how politically incorrect we were not that many years ago. All right. But to me, I always looked at it like, hey, it's part of our legacy, whether you loved it or hated it. It was what we did. Yeah. And it was as good as any, if not the best, most popular annual radio promotion in America. Maybe in American history.
Yep.
20,000 people at 6 a.m. in arenas to see guys eat chicken wings and women wearing thongs counting the wings, right? Who could have devised it as a plan? But the bottom line on it is, I've come a long way around. I've almost come 360 on this, Harry. I loved it when we started it. Mm-hmm. I loved it for the first 18, 20 years. I thought it was an amazing event. Then it got really kind of sordid. It got a little tawdry. And then I started not liking it. And then now a couple of years into retirement, I'm looking back on it and went, hey, a lot of people loved it. It wasn't for everyone. It wasn't supposed to be for everyone. But it kind of fit the who we were. We were politically incorrect for a lot of those 30 plus years I was on the air, and most of the 26 years we did wing balls. And I did want to do one last, the 27th one. And Al said, no, we only designed it so that until the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl. I said, yeah, but the final wing ball. Everybody comes one last. Oh, it would have been great.
Culmination.
And I don't think there was one person besides me who wanted to go any further with it. But you know what? Now I'm back supporting it, even though in this documentary, my own wife trashes it.
I remember the wing bowl, working the wing bowl when the Eagles were going to the Super Bowl with T.O.
Oh,
that was insane.
That was the craziest one of all.
Yeah.
That was where we had no tickets, and there were 10,000 or so people.
We had to ticket it the next year. Yep.
And they smashed windows, and they created and they went. I'm amazed we got to do them after them.
Yeah.
That was the one. And I guess if the Eagles had won that year, we might not have. That might have been the end of that of ever doing it again.
After 2008, too, when the Phillies won, we had the World Series trophy there. I think that's the one that Snooki was at from Jersey Shore, if I recall.
Let me make this clear. Snooki Polizzi is a hero to me. The lady from Jersey, we paid her $5,000 to show up. Jersey Shore had just come out, the TV show. And we got there, and Al had this idea to bring in a mechanical bull, right? And we didn't know what to do with Snooki after she went in and waved to everybody. And Al went, ask her if she'll ride the mechanical bull. She did. She was great. And the fans went nuts. And now it sounds like that event is even dumber than I think about it.
That was crazy.
We did all that stuff. I'm sorry. It was fun. It was a time in the world where you could do more of that kind of stuff that you ever will be able to again. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
Unreal. I think Tommy Conwell played at that particular wing bowl as well.
He did.
Yeah,
and he liked it too.
Oh,
he loved it.
Tommy's the best. I absolutely love him. And what has Sea Isle City meant to you?
Wow, it's become a sadder place to me now because the guy that first told me about it is no longer with us. And that's Big Daddy Graham, who loved it his whole life. Oh. He loved the bar scene and the carousel and outdoor concerts and all that stuff. I would come in like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would be on the air. And he would come down during breaks and tell stories. Among the stories was how much he loved Sea Isle. And a lot of times, too, Jay said you were his boss now, but you didn't know this. I could say it now. He would go, put in another spot. I'm not done with my story.
He's adding spots.
No extra commercials on so he could finish this telling me the story. But the bottom line is, it's an awesome place. The reason why I say that is, I hate Avalon. I get into a protracted legal case with them because they gave me, they arrested me for not having beach tags. So I don't like Avalon. And Stone Harbor's okay, but it's a little too snooty for me. And Ocean City's too crowded. And I had something wrong with all the really great Jersey Shore towns along our band, and not Sea Isle. Sea Isle fits exactly what I love about it. And the beaches are spectacular, and the people are just down to earth. They're great. I love it there. I mean, JJ, you're not gonna believe this. My wife's got me riding a bike around there.
What?
Yes, riding a bike, and I know why. Because she knows I'll eventually get run over. This is the way she gets rid of me.
I grew up at 62nd and Pleasure, right across from the Acme.
Wow, nice.
And
right at the market.
Yep, the old Kix is still there, and just I love Sea Isle City. It's got great memories for me as well, and
it's fantastic.
It is one of the great places. Harry, last one for you.
Did doing the job for all those years change? Like, are you as big of a sports fan having done radio?
I'm a different sports fan. I know that.
So am I.
Yeah, me too.
It's harder to be a fan of teams if you get to know individuals and know they're jerks. And that tainted somewhat the way I felt about teams. By the same token, I'm probably a bigger Eagles fan, or have been, because of my admiration for Jason Kelce. So knowing the personalities swings you in one direction or the other. But it's weird. Like, I've learned in the year plus off, finally learned that all of it doesn't matter as much as your family. So, like, my grandsons play soccer. They play high school in Lenape in Jersey, and I'm watching soccer. Now, don't get me wrong, I still despise it, right? It's still a boring, horrible sport. But I went to a couple of games, and I'm more open to it because I'm able now better to see what I should have seen before, which is these teams, like the Eagles especially, bond generations and families. That's the way that it was handed down. The same way it was handed down, people that kept listening to our show. A father would be listening when he took his kid to school, and then he'd tell his kid why he thought it was a good show. And then when they went to work years later, they would listen. That's how we lasted so long. So I'm better able now to understand how sports is a bridge to the generations. But also, there are individuals now that I never liked. Tiger Woods. I mean, these guys, if people are not fan friendly, I'm more likely than ever to not root for them and actively root against them. So in that regard, I'm not that good a fan. I'm a very negative fan. But it did change it. It changed. There's no way you could do all these years and be the same kind of crazy fan you were when you started. No, not possible.
You grow up and you have this reverence. The athletes are bigger than life, and you realize eventually that they're human beings and they're flawed, and some of them are raging assholes. And it does. It taints the pool. It just does.
Very true.
But there are some good people though as well.
A lot of.
Go ahead.
I'm saying there are a lot of good people too, but they don't get the same, especially in talk radio. They're not going to get the same attention that the jerks and jackasses.
Yeah, controversy sells. Last thing for you, Ange. Joe Conklin was a guy that provided so much comedic relief on the show. Joe's been a guest on this show, and his ability to do so many voices, including yours. What did you think of his impression when you first heard it, and did your thoughts on it change?
No,
I loved it. I thought it was spectacular.
He's the most talented guy I ever worked. anywhere.
Disgustingly talented, yeah.
So many voices, and he knew how to make those voices funnier than they were in real life. I loved when he sang in my voice because I can't sing, but he was pitch perfect. So you got to hear what you sounded like, if you actually had good pitch. Because you were behind the scenes. I've never worked with anyone who was harder to work with because he was an artist. He was a perfectionist. Yeah. And we had a schedule when to use these bits he was doing. And he would run over the schedule to where I couldn't play them but one time in a show. And I would go, Joe, do you understand? You got to get it out to me. It's art, but it's also commerce. You got to get me the stuff.
I need it by 7:20 so I can replay it at 9:20. Different audience.
He knows.
Right.
Joe didn't care.
Nope, never.
Unless it was perfect, he wouldn't give it to you. But look, putting all that aside, they taught me early on. Another thing that's Tom Bigby that I trashed in the book taught me was moments. Radio's about moments, things that people remember and tell other people about. There is no one in our 33 years at WIP that provided more of those moments than Joe Cataldi. And to this day, when I bump into people, the person they want to talk the most about is Joe. And how amazing he was at what he did. And here's the last thing. So like a year before the end, when I knew I was retired, I had a serious meeting with Joe Cataldi, which is virtually impossible. And I went, Joe, let's have some fun here. I'm going to go on the air. I'm going to say to you, Joe, as a final gesture of love and devotion, could you not do me for the rest of my time at WIP? And he went, bleep, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing whatever I want. I went, all right, let's just pretend for a couple of weeks, and then you can sneak it in, right? Okay, good, I'll do it. So he agrees to it. We go on the air. He goes, all right, fine. But he's a lousy actor, too. He wasn't really selling it well. Within an hour, he broke it.
He couldn't, yeah.
He just
can't help himself.
Right.
But I honestly, he attacked me. He even created an alter ego in the last 10 years or so. Carmen, he had a caller called in who would always call in, and he would say, Angelo, I just want to tell you, man, you're doing an amazing job. I love that sequence. And then he'd point us out, right? And then I would say, well, thank you, Carmen. I can't tell you how much that means to me. And then he would go, it's just a shame you're a big fat pig. And then he would attack me. And he would go, you left your first family in the woods, right? This was vicious stuff, right?
Oh.
And the thing about it was, what people never knew was, even though, we were great together in there, those things he was saying to me were all rooted in belief that he actually held about.
It's subconscious.
Really, deep down, he actually had incredible hostility for me. Because I was always yelling at him, I need this thing, get me this, do this. When are you going to learn Sirianni's voice? All this stuff. And so he would channel it and savagely attack me.
As a character.
The thing was, now you're the host all these years. You would be able to get him out of there, right, Jason? You couldn't.
No.
But people loved it.
Yeah.
And it was the same bit every time for 10 years. When they heard his voice, they go, stay tuned. Right. It's coming. He's going to turn.
Yeah, the heel turn's coming.
You got to give the people what they want. And they wanted the host to get savagely, brutally attacked by Carmen. Joe Cataldi was a brilliant. Honestly, he still is a genius. He's a genius.
I think the juxtaposition of the show that it provided, where you're going crazy, and then you have these moments with Conklin where the show just turns into something totally different for maybe just 2 minutes, was the relief that people needed.
But I guarantee you were our boss how many years, Jason?
11.
11.
Wow.
You had more than a fight a year with him. right?
Oh yeah.
You had to have
like Joe. You can't do a bit about Angelo going to a mobile gas station and
a whorehouse. So he had no rules.
Yeah, he was not politically correct at all.
Not at all. And he would get in so much trouble, but he loved it. He loved. Yeah. We loved listening to him because when he hit a home run, which was often, it was the best thing that was on our show that day.
Mm-hmm. On the station, frankly.
Yeah.
His ability to do Arlen Specter better than Arlen Specter was.
Oh, wow.
Good morning, Angelo.
Angelo.
He would call when Arlen was on.
Yeah.
Or he would call back right after Arlen.
Yep.
And he go, one other thing, Angelo. That single bullet theory and the JFK assassination. It was the right decision, I don't know why you're lying about it.
That's so great. And great I'm so happy you came on, man. Thanks for doing this so much. You look so well.
Well, it's the tan. It's just the tan.
Actually, you always tanned well.
Yeah.
I'm decaying inside. Believe me, I'm old.
I want to invite people to go to your website, angelocataldi.com, because you were very active on there with the blog.
The blog, yeah.
Also, the TV show with Jay Black and Rhea, they can check out as well. And you actually did an audiobook version of yours as well for those that don't like to read like myself and would rather listen, which is awesome.
Yeah, this may not come as a shock to you, Jason, but lots and lots of people waited for the audiobook to come out. But initially, the audiobook company wanted to get someone else to read it.
Conklin?
No. That might work. Yeah. They said, no, I think we want a pro. I auditioned for my own book. And they went, we think we want to go in another direction. And I went, no, I think I'm going to read it. They caved in eventually.
And thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Nobody's doing it better.
Well, thank you, guys. It was an honor and a pleasure to be on with you. You're two of the real icons in our business, and I respect everything you guys have done in radio. Thanks.
Thank you.
Angelo, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Man.
There he is, Angelo Cataldi. Just incredible.
Yeah.
That's episode 100. That was unbelievable. We certainly covered a lot of ground, Harry.
Yeah, we did. We did. We could have gone on, too.
Yeah.
But, he's got to get back to the beach.
Yeah, yes.
How about this? Martin Roach, down in Sea Isle.
Fantastic. Very revealing of the person more so than just the on-air host.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it was
I really appreciate him coming on, and he was a demanding guy to work with.
Well, all the good ones are.
Yep, they are.
Yeah.
I got along well with him because he just wanted to know that he was getting support, that you were willing to work hard for his show, and the role I was in there at the time was to give the talent as much support as I could. Mm-hmm. I had to support them all, every show, but so he and I got along really well. I got along with Howard really well too. So I guess I was a pretty diplomatic boss at the time.
Yeah,
incredible stuff. So thanks to Angelo for joining us. Any last words, Harry, for episode 100?
No, I mean it was great. I always love bringing on just legendary people in our business, because I had so much respect. Like you brought it up, like his energy level was something that just amazed me on a daily basis, to be able to bring it like that, because I didn't do it for maybe half the amount of time he did it. And there were days where I had nothing.
Yeah.
And you kind of knew it, like I couldn't fake it. I couldn't raise my energy level to sort of get through it. And he never wavered. He was always up here.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
He could manufacture when nothing was happening, which is not an easy thing to do.
That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and kudos to his wife Gail. Because the way he operated, he was all. I mean, we had to send him the email about giveaways for the next day by 6 o'clock because he was in bed at 6:30. He was not going to be awake after 6:30 every night.
The discipline that takes.
Yeah.
I mean, I be right up front. I don't have it.
Me neither.
I couldn't have done it.
And the thing is when you have success, sometimes that discipline will go away. It never went away.
Well, you get a little lazy. You start, like you said, cutting corners. You never cut corners.
Yeah.
So,
it's the resoluteness was unbelievable. So, thanks to Angelo Watches, everybody. Thanks for 100 episodes of the OG's podcast. What comes up next, we shall see. Oh, the big dog Joe Rose. Totally understand it. T from the 203. So, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. We'll see you next time on the Odd G's podcast.